folks, we're back again. We're still here in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park at Cades Cove, and I have with me now an authority on the Great Smoky Mountains in Cades Cove, because you lived here, didn't you, Ruth Davis?
I did. I lived here until I was 19. I went away to college and got married.
And this is Ruth Davis, by the way. Did I tell you folks that? And Ruth is here just working her little heart out, making fried pies for us. And she does them the right way. Now, that dough is biscuit dough, right?
It is. Mm-hmm.
And now, are those dried apples?
Dried apples reconstituted with water and sugar.
She knows. And you notice how she folds them over down. I have to ask you a question, Ruth.
Yeah.
I don't mean to embarrass you with this question, but I have to ask it. How often do you stick your finger through the dough when you make fried pies?
Well, I don't, and I end up with thin dough sometimes.
Well, no, thin dough's better than thick. My mom always fussed at me because the dough wasn't thick enough. I was too thin. It was too thick. I'll get this right. Easy for me to say. Now, I understand that in addition to doing, and you're going to give us the recipe that I can give to folks, and you know about recipes, don't you?
I do.
Because I happen to have right over here one of a 2-volume work that was
called Recipes, Remedies, and Rumors.
All right, I like the rumors part. Ruth, it's a pleasure to have you with us. I'm going to go eat fried pies. Look at those pies. Do those not look like a picture in a book? Now, folks, we have a special treat for you. Lauren Davis, no relation to Ruth Davis, has put together a little piece in which Ms. Davis can tell you lots of things we didn't have time for here today. Watch this.
Well, we're here in Cades Cove with one of the few women who can say that she actually grew up in Cades Cove. This is Ruth Davis. Tell us what it was like growing up in Cades Cove.
Well, there were very few families that lived here when I was here, and very few tourists. I was born in 1946, and tourists weren't coming through the cove very much at that time. It was quiet. We worked from daylight till dark, usually Monday morning till Saturday night, and then went to church and rested on Sunday afternoon. But not many people, no neighbors to visit with, and no friends to play with, just family.
Because y'all did not have electricity growing up, right?
No, we didn't.
What was that like?
That was all we'd ever known, but we'd go visit our grandparents and aunts and uncles, and it was exciting to get to watch television. But we came back home to a cold house and built a fire and went on with our lives. But it was quiet and peaceful. We didn't have any interruptions as far as doing our homework.
And what is it like to be able to drive through here and see the house where you used to live in a national park?
I guess I feel blessed that I was able to live here. And I know there was a lot of heartache from the people that had to move from the cove when the park took over. But and a lot of people didn't ever get over that. But I feel that we're lucky to have the cove preserved and to be able to go through and visit it, and it is an honor to be able to say that I lived in that awesome house. We have our Cades Cove Preservation Association. That's one of our goals, is to preserve the cemeteries, churches, and the old stories that those people told, and pictures and everything that we can that they had.
All right, Ruth Davis, one of the few people who can say she actually grew up in Cades Cove. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Now, what you see behind me is Cable Mill in the heart of Cades Cove. And what happens is the water stream is directed down across the top of the wheel. The wheel turns from the power of the water. Inside, the gears turn to 2 millstones that fit together. And the top one is smooth, the bottom one is grooved. The corn is poured in at the center of the stones, and as it makes its way out toward the bottom one in the groove, it's ground by the 2 turning together. Now, they don't turn that way, they turn smoothly since they're on an axis in the middle. And the flour or meal drops off the outer edge. Now, that means that part of it is very fine and part of it is not very fine, and you dealt with that by sifting it before you used it. Now, we don't have to do that anymore. We buy it in a bag ready to go, and that's what we'll be cooking with. Now that you've seen the mill and I've given you that wonderful lecture on how cornmeal is ground, through the magic of television, we're going right now to cook some with it. Now folks, we visited you over at the old mill, and look what I've got, cornmeal. And what am I going to make? Something typical of the era that we're talking about, and we are of course in Cades Cove, in the picnic area where you can actually cook things. And what I'm stirring up here is some batter to make some fried cornbread. Now I'm going to give you a recipe for this, but if I were you, I wouldn't pay too awful much attention to it, because you just sort of take some cornmeal, and the recipe I'll give you calls for a couple of cups, and you're going to work into that some buttermilk, some sweet milk. Sometimes at our house we had what my mama called poor folks cornbread, which was cornmeal, salt, and water that you fried in some bacon grease. That's not highly recommended these days. We didn't use this good Martha White cornmeal mix when we did ours because it hadn't been invented yet. Now, it's got hot rise and all that, I understand that, but since it wasn't invented, we didn't use it. We had corn that was ground at a mill up in the Sharps Chapel section. Oh my, that's too hot, but that's all right, you get the idea. This is the way it was done. Now let me tell you what I like to do now. I use Martha White cornmeal mix. I put some buttermilk in it. I get it till it's soft enough that it will run when I put it on here, as you saw, and then we just turn it over like that. See, am I good or what? That one's not ready yet. You can usually tell when they're ready to turn by looking. They should have bubbles all around the edge. You may see a little bit of browning on the edge. But what I like to do is take that batter, just like we did it in 1935. Now remember, I wasn't born yet in 34, but I was in 35. And I grate up some hot pepper cheese, and I add that to my cornbread batter. Notice I'm not saying dough, I'm saying batter, because it's too thin to be dough. Now Neil, you may have to look away while I turn these. See, only that one area. I'm not big on camping out. If you are, we're going to show you some other great stuff here today. But the idea, get your large iron skillet, cook it right in your kitchen, and it'll be terrific. Now, in just a moment, we're going to wander over, and I'm going to show you some real old-time cooking, cooked the way my great-grandmother did it, in a real cast-iron Dutch oven. Folks, we're not done yet. We're going to listen to Boogertown Gap for a few minutes, and then we'll be back. Listen, they're good.
Peaches in the summertime, apples in the fall. If I can't have the girl I love, I'll have no